everybody, and welcome to the Barcoding Huddle. I'm your host, Jody Costa. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Barcoding Incorporated. And today we're going to be talking about a very cool topic. We're going to be talking about chasing productivity, how industrial browsers can help achieve warehousing agility with Ivanti Wavelink. And I'm very excited to welcome my guests to come on camera with me, Greg and Greg. So please go ahead and turn your cameras on. And we'll get started with today's call. Hello.
Hello.
Great to see you. Welcome to the
call.
Jody. Welcome to the huddle. We appreciate Ivanti sponsoring this conversation and look forward to learning a lot today. I know I, for one, am planning to learn a lot. Barcoding Inc., for those who are unfamiliar, we are a supply chain automation and innovation company dedicated to helping organizations be more efficient, accurate, and connected. And our partnership with Ivanti helps us do that. And that's why I'm super thrilled to have both Greg Henry and Greg Berger with me today. Two fine gentlemen I've had the pleasure of knowing for quite some time now. So can't wait to get started in our conversation. But first, it's always good for everyone to learn who they're about to hear from. So I thought we could start with a couple quick introductions. So Greg Henry, why don't we start with you and maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Great. Good to see you, Jody. I'm Greg Henry. I'm with Ivanti Wavelink. I manage their strategic alliances. Been in the industry for 30 years now. Spent some pretty good years there with working with Jody at Barcoding. So we got lots of in connection. Yeah. A great organization, lots of great people. Had a great time there. And now I've moved over to the vendor side. So doing stuff with Ivanti.
Awesome. Well, obviously thrilled to have you back and get to talk to you with now your new role at Ivanti. Greg Berger, how about you? Let's hear a little bit about you.
Yeah. Hey, Jody. Thank you. So Greg Berger, I'm the manager of system engineers for Ivanti Wavelink for the Americas. I've been a system engineer in some capacity for Wavelink and then Ivanti for the past 16 years. And like Mr. Henry, I've been in the industry for over 30. So, working with a lot of different solutions, we're kind of known as primarily a telnet company originally and grew into things like industrial browsers. But we really bring a lot to bear in pretty exciting times.
Yeah, no, I'm really thrilled to be having this conversation today because there's no time more important than now to talk about user productivity, task worker, operational excellence, and all the things that Ivanti and Barcoding both are focused on for our customers. So today we are talking about chasing productivity, and we are really talking specifically about your industrial browser. And I think probably just to get this whole thing kicked off, for those who may be starting to watch this going, I really need to start at square one, right? What are we talking about when we talk about an industrial browser, Greg Henry? What are we talking about?
So an industrial browser really, we're all familiar with Chrome, right? Your PC browser. You use it to go explore the internet.
Right.
The beauty of the industrial browser is it takes all of that core functionality and adds another layer of functionality that's really focused on enabling the technology to leverage the mobile worker. So when you put, if you look at a browser on your PC and you look at it on a handheld, and the website will literally look different because you got a smaller size screen.
Right.
Velocity, our industrial browser, takes that into consideration and ensures you get the exact same image regardless of the device that you're on. So when you think about mobile workers, sometimes they have tablets, sometimes they have little handheld devices. And those screens, because they're different, with Chrome or Safari will often display the image differently. And what we do is ensure that if you're running a WMS, you're running SAP, you're running Oracle, you always get the exact same experience on that device so that mobile users don't have to figure out how to zoom or configure the Chrome settings specific to them. And then it's got a whole bunch more functionality on top of that as far as scanners and all kinds of integration as well.
Which I know we're going to get into, so I'm excited about that. It sounds to me like, this is kind of a cornerstone for how you start to plan your work around mobile users, mobile applications, right? So, maybe just to expand a little bit more on that, Greg Berger, like, am I on the right path there? Is this kind of a foundational element, like a backbone of that mobile strategy?
Yeah, it really is. So, to kind of build on what Greg said and kind of answer your question, and I mentioned early on that, we're primarily known originally as a telnet company. Back in the day in the 70s and 80s and 90s, everything was telnet, big iron, IBM, DEC systems, things like that. And over time, all the WMS vendors, or most of the WMS vendors, have been migrating to web-based applications as opposed to telnet-based applications.
Ah.
But it's not like browsing social media. It's not like, shopping for Amazon online. That's not the kind of browsing you're doing. It's the processes that we're connecting to are still very linear processes where somebody's logging in, they're recording some information about their environment and the tasks they're working on, and they're collecting inventory information, very much like the old telnet applications used to do. And so again, to make the comparison to a browser that most people think of, you're not saving pages. You're not going back to view something you viewed before. You want to keep moving forward, and then you want to integrate very tightly with barcodes and RFID tags, and ironically, a lot of other things that we can interface to within the warehouse, like door sensors and lighting systems and temperature and thermostats and all kinds of other data that we can collect. An application like a Chrome or Safari just isn't going to know anything about.
Right. So, just like a lot of times when we're making plans for our warehouses, distribution centers, and we talk about things being fit to purpose, I guess in this sense, the browser, even the browser that you choose, needs to be fit to the work that's being done. And I know I hadn't really thought of it that way. So maybe that's a useful bit of advice for our listeners, is make sure that you're thinking about every element in your strategy being fit to purpose for that work.
Yeah, exactly right. Just like you wouldn't grab your laptop and hold it in your arm with a scanner and a tethered scanner in the other arm and try to go out to the warehouse with it.
You get a tired arm, right? I mean,
yeah, same thing holds true for the browser.
So I mean, just to make sure we're still setting the stage a little bit, Greg Henry, I know, a Chrome has extensions and plugins and maybe some other features that folks are familiar with. Can you talk to me about what it's like on the industrial browser side?
Absolutely. So Velocity, which is Ivanti's industrial browser, not only renders pages, which is its primary focus, but we also enable you to get direct access to the barcode scanner. So developers can say, I want to be able to scan code 39 at this particular field and UPC at another field. With a standard Chrome, not only doesn't it integrate to the barcode scanner, but you have to configure those settings globally for not only your app, for the WMS application, but any application that runs on that device. So we allow you to go another level deeper there. We allow you to build your own custom keyboards, right? When we're talking about mobile users, keyboards are really important in these touchscreen devices. And we're all familiar with, the big keyboard that Google gives you or Safari gives you, a full keyboard. You don't always need all those special keys. You usually don't need those special keys. And so through our keyboard development tool, you can build keyboards specific to each prompt. If you only need numerics, if you only need alpha, if you don't need any special function keys, or you have a special function key that you use often, right? So we create different keyboards. We allow you to add voice to the application. So you can do directed put away. You can speak to the device and translate that. We're connecting to IoT devices, as Greg Berger said, connecting to refrigeration systems and camera systems. So you get it just expands the capability, and those capabilities are really focused on improving that mobile user's workflow, right? How do we do the process even better or even smoother? Smoother is probably a better word. Smoother than how it was articulated on the old, big PC screen, where they present you with a ton of data, and most of it a picker doesn't need, or the mobile worker doesn't need a lot of it. We can screen scrape away data you don't need. So we can really tailor this thing to really be focused on improving that workflow and taking out the unnecessary steps, increasing productivity and reducing errors. Is really, at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Woo, speaking my language there, Mr. Henry. But it sounds like to me this is all part of kind of this ongoing evolution that's been happening in warehouses and distribution centers, right? So this seems like yet another component as you are modernizing and as you are, improving processes in your warehouse. This is something you should consider. Greg Berger, I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit more on that evolution, just to kind of finalize our context setting. Like, how does this look in the scope of everything else that a warehouse might be looking to modernize? Like, how would they think about this? How have you seen this play out with different organizations?
Sure. Well, so like I said, a lot of the WMS providers are moving to web-based applications. They're also moving to the cloud. So, security comes into play too, where you've got to think about, okay, how do I make a secure connection to the cloud and supporting maybe not a third-party certificate, but a self-signed certificate and things like that. So you've got to take those kinds of considerations, into consideration, not to be redundant. And so, we've tackled a lot of these issues over the years with our thin clients using things like Wavelink Studio and Wavelink Telnet applications, and we've tackled a lot of those challenges. Well, now that you put the browser in the same environment, you've got to kind of repeat all those issues all over again. And basically, since we're already working from a known platform, we just build on that with browser capabilities.
That's awesome. And I think, the velocity, most people who've been around, they are familiar with the Wavelink name, I would hope. So this is a familiar company bringing a known solution to the table. So that's great. I think we started here this conversation. So I think now, we've got some feet under us around this topic, but we talked about chasing productivity. And I really think in the space of our current environment where we're dealing with a lot of labor shortages and we're dealing with employee experience kind of being number one coming out of the COVID pandemic times, which, we're hopefully coming out of the COVID pandemic times. So I'll put a disclaimer there, but let's start talking about user experience, because I think that there's a lot to unpack here in terms of the impact to users, right? So, when there's end users having issues logging back into systems and roaming and devices going to sleep, is this product Velocity as an industrial browser something that can help? Greg Berger, I'll toss that back to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually got a rapid adoption website with it, which actually plugs in a whole bunch of really cool, we call them scripts. We also call them tasks that get put into the product. And so to give you an example, it's very commonplace for when you get to a particular input field that there might be some default data already there in the field. And so if the end user just simply pulls the trigger on the scanner, he's going to append to that data that's already in that field, and it's going to get sent off to the WMS, and it's going to look like the wrong information. So we've got a very simple concept of a script that's called clear field before scan. And so basically what it is as soon as we pull that scanner, we're analyzing the web page and say, if there's data already in the field, put a delete in front of the scan so that you're not putting extra data in there before you go to submit it.
So putting some smarts to it, so the user doesn't have to think about it constantly while they're doing their job.
Absolutely. The other thing that you get out of that same conversion process, the migration process, to your point, was the reconnect scripts. So it's not uncommon for some of these applications to have some dead ends in the applications where all of a sudden you get a 404 message. For people that have been in a browser before and seen 404, that just means it couldn't find the resource it was looking for. Well, what we can do is we can intercept those and just automatically go back so that you're almost not even presenting that to the end user. They may not understand why they hit a dead end, but we'll just basically take them back out and put them back in a safe place where they left off, as opposed to them looking at a screen and having to go find somebody and say, what's this on the screen? I don't understand what I'm looking at.
It sounds to me we're talking very much about alleviating some frustrations. Would you agree, Greg Henry?
Absolutely. It's all about removing those frustrations. Is a great word, right? It's here's a great example that we do all the time. So many applications are multi-tiered, right? You have a list of functions that then drop you into another list of functions. Warehouse, we use warehouse a lot because we do a lot in the warehouse as examples. But within a warehouse, you could have item movement kind of functions that then drop you into picking and put away, which requires the user to press a button, then press another button. With Velocity, we can eliminate that first button press and just take the users right to the more meaningful thing. If we know all the users have to press one, we just bypass that page and display the second page. And the beauty of it is when they press the second page, behind the scenes, the browser is intelligent and it's reporting back to the host a press for one and a press for two, right? So the host doesn't ever have to be changed. There's no programming, if you will, on the host side. It's all configured on the browser and allows us to take seconds often out of each process. And when you're talking of hundreds of users and seconds per transaction, that adds up to real productivity savings, over the days and weeks.
I'm always surprised by how, some very small changes to a process can add up to something so significant. I mean, we talk about this all the time on the barcoding side. But I think, it's interesting to me because I want to dive into a few more of the features around the industrial browser side. But I think I want to take a pause because, I'm hearing things of like, this sounds great. I can, help eliminate duplicate data or help users who might get frustrated, eliminate some steps. And this is more of a business question, how do I start the process of maybe even identifying those things? So I think this is, what would you guys recommend if you're like, hey, this is starting to sound good to me. How would I start to think about it? How would I maybe interview the users or things like that? I don't know if Greg Berger, you want to start and then Greg Henry jump in or vice versa.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you mentioned COVID before. One of the things that we've lost that I think is really valuable is walking the warehouse with the operations people and with the end users and seeing their environment. And I love doing that. And I can't wait to get back to doing that. I can't tell you how many times we've been out in the warehouse and we'll have had a briefing in the conference room with the operations staff, and they'll say, here are our workflow procedures that we give to our end users. And then we get out into the warehouse and we find they're doing something completely differently. And you look over and you say, well, why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? So I'll give you an example. We were in one of those situations, and all of a sudden, the user sets down his mobile device, reaches in his pocket, pulls out a calculator, and puts something into his calculator. And we're like, what just happened? What was he doing? And they said, well, the problem is that the system tells them to pick in eaches, but the product is in cases. And so what he did was he had to figure out how many cases he had to pull in order to fulfill the number of eaches. So what we did was we actually supplemented it with a little script with a little transaction screen that basically says, okay, the pick quantity is 2,000 and the case quantity is 200, grab 10.
Wow. I mean, what, right? Like it had to be quite the light bulb moment for that end user customer. The organization was probably like, oh my gosh.
It's fun stuff, like Greg said, when you're saving seconds, and there in that situation, somebody spent 30 seconds on that transaction that had no productive value whatsoever. And we could just, with a tap of the screen, just give them what they needed.
Right. Well, and I'm also like imagining like juggling, like I gotta put this thing down here, I gotta pick up my calculator, I gotta do math. Ugh.
Right. And I'm sure some people are saying, well, it's a mobile device, I should be able to use the calculator on the device, but these devices are locked down, so they might not have thought of that either. So, yeah. So I was, as getting started goes, I know that barcoding has got a great consulting practice, and Ivanti Wavelink has also got a good consulting practice. We're not just order takers. We don't just have somebody call up and say, I need this part number, can you ship me 50 of them? We get involved with our customers as you do as well, and we like to walk the walk with them so that we make sure that we're developing a solution and not just selling a product.
Oh yeah. As Greg Henry knows, process people, then technology, right, Greg?
I was going to say that. And it's true because we build and sell technology, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about the people and the workflow. And ultimately it is people, process, and then technology. And, often we jump to the technology first, and that should always be the last, because at the end of the day, you're trying to improve that process to help people do a better job.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about maybe some of those more possibilities in terms of these light bulb moments with velocity. So I'm thinking, going back, Greg Henry, to that concept around the keyboards. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. So how is it when you want to go to maybe like a keyless device or a touch screen? How do I start to think about that? I know Ivanti has a lot of experience in this migration from maybe a keyed device to a touch screen, and I think the industrial browser is playing a part, right?
Yep. Yeah. So the industrial browser is, I mean, it really is a mobile application, right? We think of a browser as a rendering tool, but Velocity really is a mobile application. And not only does it render, as we've said before, but it allows you to do what was traditionally thick client kind of functionality, right? We're really using the power of that mobile device to do a lot of stuff that programmatically people would have to do. Keyboards being the first thing, right? So out of the box, Velocity will just render your display. But as let's say you're moving from a Windows keyboard device to now an Android touchscreen. You put that over, and what immediately happens is you get a really small box. And if you're running Chrome, it's even worse, because you get a very sized box depending on what device. And
Right.
then it may pop up a keyboard, and you'll have a whole bunch of space in between because it's just not articulated right. So Velocity out of the box has a migration capability that just natively puts up those screens and drops our default keyboards. And our default keyboards are designed to fit inside the space of most data collection devices, and are kind of already pre-built to be large key buttons, right? From that, then you can go in and through the scripting engine, make all kinds of changes. And those changes can be as simple as designing your own new keyboards, or if you integrate our Neurons for IoT platform, you could now, for example, call a camera system. Let me give, this is a great example. I've got a customer in France, warehouse customer, shrink wraps pallets of product, puts it onto the truck, it leaves.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to the other end, and the customer at the other end calls up and says, hey, there was something wrong with my pallet. There was either a forklift was stuck through it, or it tipped over. And they, prior to putting in the solution I'm going to talk about, spent 4 hours on average per case researching who built the pallet, when did we build the pallet, how was the pallet shrink wrapped, what truck did it go on. With Velocity and our IoT extension now, they were able to, when they scanned the pallet right before they put it onto the truck, they had an existing camera system that was monitoring all the bay doors. And because we knew from the Velocity screen what order number it was, what bay they were at already, we turned on the camera for that particular bay and filmed that pallet being moved out and put onto the truck. So they got to, and then we would store that as a video file by the order number. And now in 10 minutes, they can go pull up that video file and they can email it to their customer and go, here is the pallet from all sides. As we put it on the truck, you can see it wasn't tipped over. There wasn't a forklift through it, and saved hours per claim on there, right? And so Velocity is much more than just a rendering tool and a browser. It really is a thick client that allows you to connect a whole bunch more stuff into it. And as IoT devices are coming out, we're just scratching the surface now on what capabilities we can trigger to start processes, or use sensor input to modify processes along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very exciting because everybody's looking for an edge, right? So seconds matter, labor retention matters, customer experience, like you were just talking about, all of this really can be the difference maker in our world today. So I'm also curious because these are living, breathing systems that we're talking about, and I'm assuming updates come into play. So maybe those organizations out there are like, well, this all sounds good, but I'm still using Chrome. I got Android, Chrome, it's all good. But then I get an OS update and my app starts acting kind of funky. Does an industrial browser help solve that problem, Greg Berger?
Absolutely. And actually, we've got some cases of that. We actually had an early adopter in Australia a few years ago that had rolled out a bunch of new devices, and they got an OS update, and it literally shut them down because it changed the application as it behaved on their devices. By using our industrial browser, you've got complete version control. So you've got the ability, if we are going to release an update, you'll get a chance to go through and test your application, make sure everything still works properly. We do our due diligence on our QA to make sure we're not breaking things when we come out with new releases and stuff. Chrome and Safari and those mobile browsers, they don't care. They think that people are out there surfing the web and checking their social media and ordering product, from Amazon, and they don't think about the fact that there's other things tied to that might break when they do an update.
Right. Which, I mean, I'm assuming today it just gets more and more complicated as everything's gone to the cloud and right.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly
Let me give you a real world here. So we have a voice engine as well, right? So Speakeasy is a voice engine. And there are folks out there using Chrome and using Chrome's voice extensions. Google just deprecated voice from their Chrome browser. So
Ooh.
all of those people just instantly lost the ability to do voice. And that's it, right? So there is no guarantee with these consumer products that what you have today, you will have tomorrow. As Google and Apple decide, that the bigger consumer universe is obviously more profitable and more interesting to them than our industry, rightfully so from their point of view. But that's where our focus is all about, these mobile workers. Not only if we were to deprecate a service, we would definitely have it backfilled with something that
Right.
their implementation, and we give you lots of notice. But something we also folks don't often recognize is we take all the responsibility to make sure Velocity works across a huge platform of devices, right? We are validated on over 30 manufacturers' devices. So whether you're a Zebra, a Honeywell, or some unknown mobile device, chances are we've ensured that Velocity will work on that. So you're not locked into one vendor for the rest of your life, right? You can have a mixed population of vendors and devices, and it allows the user to really pick best of breed hardware for their specific user environments.
Right. Which, I mean, most organizations are probably nodding their head saying, yeah, I have a mixed bag of things, right? And I have a mixed bag of manufacturers, and I have a mixed bag of years and OS, or an application, when the apps were rolled out and when the OSs were rolled out and when my MDM was rolled out. And
Yeah.
it seems very, very complex to try to keep it all together, which is why, honestly, from a selfish point of view, that's one of the key contributing factors of a partner like Barcoding is being able to have trusted resources that can help you make sense of all these things that are interconnected, interrelated. Right?
Yeah, even though we all talk about Android all the time now, there's still half the world is running Windows Mobile, right? And there's lots of customers that are got a foot in both lakes, and are trying to juggle two completely different worlds. And Velocity is one of those products that allows you to easily do that because it runs the same on both devices.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Greg Berger? And we're kind of flushing out all the features, I guess.
Sure. So we're talking about protection and support and things like that, and that is a really good point. Kind of to steal a tagline from Ghostbusters, who are you going to call? Because if you're using Chrome, you got a phone number for them?
Nope.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, this is where we make our living. This is where we've invested our time and efforts. And there's a reason why we fit in this space so well.
I hope they call Barcoding. If you're out there listening, who are you going to call? The answer is Barcoding Inc. But
absolutely.
So I know we kind of breezed over this, and I want to just make sure I reinforce it. security. So if we're talking about labor considerations, right, which we talked about users and being able to keep employees productive and happy. But the other major thing, topic on everyone's minds is security. So Greg Berger, just maybe, once again, kind of reinforce for us how that industrial browser helps on the security end of things.
It's really simplistic when you think about it, and a lot of organizations feel as though their connections, if they're going to have a secure HTTPS web connection, they feel like they're safer if they use their own self-signed cert than using a third-party cert, because chances are nobody else is going to have that cert. Well, the problem is now you have to manage that certificate on the device. And so one of the things that we've done is we've basically given you an easy way to be able to install that certificate on that device. And then when it expires, to update that certificate on the device, where if you're using Chrome, you've got to go through a lot of extra steps to figure out how you're going to do that and rotate that over to get it to recognize that certificate for your mobile device, as opposed to, kind of one throat to choke in your configuration.
Got it. And so this is really about IT having control in order to really help that warehouse productivity, that operational excellence side of things, right? So if IT if IT can have better control over this infrastructure, this technology infrastructure, then ultimately they're a better partner to the operational team, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I see. I'm starting to get it. Just not just a moderator.
That's right.
Well, I mean, I think that there's when you were talking, both of you were talking, and you were saying, "Oh, this is possible, and this is possible, and this is possible." One of the things that I immediately thought is like, well, how can I possibly figure out where I should start? So when people and organizations call you up, or when you talk to them, and they might say, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't think that I need to go down this path. I think my processes could be improved in different ways, or I don't need to necessarily prioritize the browser aspect. I might look at other priorities right now." What would you say to them in terms of things that they should look out for that might be those red flags that would point them back to prioritizing the browser, maybe as that first thing to look at to improve productivity? What little things would be waving to say, hey, you might want to put this at the top of your list?
Yeah, well, let me give you some ideas. So, I mean, again, talking about it goes back to process, right? If you think of Velocity as just a browser, most people are going to put it in the context of Chrome or Safari, right? And so it really comes back to looking at your processes and what if questions. What if you had the ability to know which users were using which devices? What if you had the ability to know when a device is dropped or abused, who was using it at that time? If you had the ability to, and these are things outside of the browser that Velocity can address. You've got 20 devices in a warehouse. Is that the right number? I know from my 30 years of selling to customers, they always start with, we think we need this X amount.
Yep.
We deploy X amount, and within months, Y amount is there, right? Devices move, people move locations, they take devices with them. And being able to know, I've got 20 devices in there, and you know what? 16 are only ever used. Well, there's 4 devices that I can repurpose somewhere else, as opposed to going and buying more devices. So Velocity allows you lots of it is an IoT device, right? It displays information, but it collects a lot of information that we don't even historically have used. And so now we're really beginning to grab these operational insights, as we call them. And so start back at your process and just ask, what if? What if I could take 3 seconds out of this? What if I didn't have to push 7 buttons? And to Greg's point, follow your users around, because the fact are, users are ingenious. They always find the best way to do something, or the simplest way to do something. And if there's something wrong in your system, if you've got a scratched barcode on a shelf label, they're not going to report that. They're just going to key it in, right? You'll never know about it. With Velocity, we can capture those scans, or we can capture fields and tell you, this field is always being keyed in, even though there's a barcode there. You might want to go look and investigate why, right? So it's asking what ifs and why questions, which goes back to people, process, and technology.
Yeah, well said. I love that, and I do think we're getting back there to those walkthroughs, right? So
Yeah.
doing your own walkthroughs or bringing in that outside perspective with a partner like Barcoding or Ivanti
Yep.
Wavelink. I think it's important to consider that third party perspective, and then asking, I think, the users directly, right? I love the
Yeah.
framing of that. What if, if you ask the users directly, what will they say? And at Barcoding, we actually have a mobile user experience review that we offer to help clients kind of gather that feedback and information. And I think just being willing to listen, right? So those soft skills, being willing to listen to the users, I think is a vital component. Greg Berger, I'm sure you've seen this in your dealings where you have more of these surprise moments where, the user tells you something or you see something that was very unexpected.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. You reminded me earlier when you were talking about the keyboards of another, we were kind of doing a conference room pilot. We're all kind of huddled around working on some things. We've got some representatives from the user team in there. And the executive sponsor came in and he looked at some of the custom keyboards we were creating. And he pulled out his iPhone and he said, how come your keyboards don't look like this? And so I said, okay, give me 30 minutes, go grab a soda or something, come back, I'll give you a keyboard that looks just like that. And so I went ahead and I kind of patterned it after what it would look like on an iPhone. And he came back and he goes, yeah, now that's what I'm talking about. So we handed it to the end user and he goes, I want my other keyboard. I don't even understand this. I don't use an iPhone, but I can't find my function keys. I've got to use control keys. They're all gone. Can I have the keyboard you created for me first back? So
Right.
yeah, it's being purpose built, and listening to the end users and understanding the environment. It all plays into it.
Yes, let's be careful of assumptions, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
We all know what that means. So
Yeah, you don't tell the executive he can't have his keyboard. You let
Right.
the end user tell the executive why he doesn't want his keyboard.
Right. I'm sure it happens all the time. I mean, we all kind of run up against that sometimes in our business where we're like, this is definitely going to be better for, whomever team. And that team says, why didn't you ask me? I would have told you I don't like any of this. So good stuff, good learnings. Well, I know we started to talk about those advanced capabilities and kind of thinking beyond obviously the browser itself, just right there's a ton of benefit to thinking about adding an industrial browser versus some consumer grade like a Chrome or a Safari. But what I started to get excited about was all the data, right? So if there's yet another pillar that is top of mind for everyone today, it's data, and how do we put that data into action? So I want to talk about kind of the more future side of this, and maybe talk to me about how this ties into some of the other exciting solutions and progress that Ivanti has coming down the path. So Greg Berger?
Oh, Mr. Berger.
Sorry, Greg, you want to take that one?
Greg Berger?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got something called Ivanti neurons, and it really permeates all different aspects of. We've been talking about supply chain, but really Ivanti's got a lot of different products. They do patch management. They've got service desks. They've got a lot of different tools, and all of these different products all have the capability of collecting data and then sharing it, analyzing it, applying machine learning, and even to a certain extent artificial intelligence. As we took that concept and we started to apply it to our space, where we've got things like Velocity and Avalanche and Mobile Iron to manage those devices, we started to be able to envision some of the different learning that you can do. So you've got a mobile device where it knows what the signal strength is in a given area. It knows, as Greg was saying earlier, when somebody is typing in information that should have been scanned and things like that. So as you start to record that information and then process that information, you start getting a lot of what we call operational insights. And so we can do things like passive site survey, where all of a sudden now we can find that, I'm getting dropped connections whenever I'm at the location of, aisle 7. So, we don't even necessarily have to know which AP they're associated to. We just know that we've got a dead spot in the warehouse. Okay. And things like that. And again, if all of a sudden you're getting a bunch of hand entries at a particular location, chances are that maybe one of the fork trucks knocked the barcode off the shelf, or at least scratched it to the point where it doesn't read anymore. And so those kinds of insights get to be really exciting. To be able to, again, have actionable data that you can go and correct problems with.
Right. It's not enough. I mean, it's great to have the data, but it's really what you do with it that matters, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Because otherwise it's very overwhelming. I mean, the amount that is collected these days. I love the fact that if for those watching, you start to find your trusted partners like Barcoding and Ivanti Wavelink, where then you can expand and you can start to tie all these things together. And that's where the power comes from. That's where the knowledge comes from, not just the data, right? And I think that's where, as you start to leverage these things and you start to apply them to your business, you're going to get hungry for more, right?
Well, and here's a good example. You're, IntelliTrack, right? You guys have released this new awesome asset management solution. And now with the IoT capabilities, we can begin to feed that platform from real-time workers, right? We can tell where workers were when something bad happens, or because we know where they are from the geographic spacing, right? We know when things were dropped. We know what kind of data input was being used. There's just so much data that device is capable of providing that has never been leveraged before. And by feeding solutions like IntelliTrack, you can get a much broader view of your entire asset pool, not only through its damage kind of repair cycle, but also through its operational repair cycle.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, is that as we think about this, right, there's a trend in consolidating data, of course, right? So let's get it into one place where we can really look at it and digest it. But there's also a consolidation of partners, your supplier ecosystem. And I think in today's world, the I'll just find someone to purchase scanners from is not really the right approach anymore, right? So you need a strategic partner because these are sophisticated computers, tablets. This is a lot of data that can really impact your business. And like I said, we're talking about the biggest issues in the globe right now. We're talking about labor and we're talking about customer experience, right? So it doesn't get much more important than that when it comes to your business. So love that.
Well, and these capabilities, you don't have to swallow the whole thing at once, right? The beauty of all of these tools is you can set your priorities and implement at your pace. And so whether knowing who's using which device is a priority 1 or a priority 6, the point is you can do it when it's appropriate for you.
So you're saying just start somewhere?
Just start.
That's right.
That's great. That's great. And I, Greg, do you have anything else to add to that in the sense of, when I should start this evaluation? I mean, tomorrow, is tomorrow good for you?
Yeah, tomorrow works. Yeah, no, so it really is a matter of getting it out there, getting the what ifs, starting to talk, through the process and whatnot. Once you kind of dip your toe in the water, the light bulbs start to go off of the other possibilities of the things you can do. We've been doing this. We already established, Greg and I have both been in the industry for over 30 years. We've got a lot of longevity within our entire staff here at Ivanti Wavelink. And so we've got experience. And so what ends up happening is you meet with your customer, you start walking through, you start seeing things, and you have these conversations. And these stories that we've been sharing resonate with customers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, we could benefit from that too. Or, hey, you could do this. What? Could you actually do this? And usually the answer is yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I have truly enjoyed our conversation today. I feel like what started off as what I thought might be a small topic is actually quite big and strategic. So I really appreciate your time today, Greg and Greg. And I think we handled that quite nicely too. So
Yes, we did.
That's right.
there. Well, I know we're coming up to the end of our conversation. And so I always like to end on a very fun note. And since both of you were brave and showed your real offices, I have a two-part question for each of you, unscripted, of course. So I'm going to ask for two favorites. The favorite thing about your current job and the industry that we're in, and your favorite thing in your office that we can see. So I'm going to start with Greg Henry.
All right. Favorite thing in the industry is just every day is unique. I mean, to be able to say I've been in the same industry for 30 years and every day is unique is kind of mind blowing. Meet new people, meet new problems, resolve issues. It's always a challenge, but it's always exciting because at the end of every day, you've accomplished something, right? There's always, you can always look back and say, today I got this, this, and this done. And that's really very cool. In my office, probably the picture of my AC Cobra that I built.
So we won't tell your family.
Yeah, there's a couple kids pictures there too, but the car is my favorite.
Yes. I think that we'll have to do a follow-up about the AC Cobra. So there'll maybe a next huddle on all on cars.
There you go.
All right. Greg Berger, favorite thing about your job or being in this industry, and the favorite thing in your office that we can see.
Yeah, so kind of similar to Greg, I've got a little bit of a social issue in that when I see something that's broken, I need to fix it. And this job gives me the ability to recognize problems and fix problems on a regular basis. And I love the challenge, and I love the satisfaction that comes from seeing a problem, applying a solution, and just seeing the looks on people's faces and the gratitude that you get from, hey, that really worked the way you said it was going to work. That's always a lot of fun. And I've been able to do that for a very long time here in doing that. And we constantly keep building new solutions to fix new problems. And so there's no mundane nature to it at all. It's always something new. It's always something different. The technology continues to grow and change and evolve. And it's really exciting, the things that we can do today.
That's awesome.
And then,
all right, the office.
Yep. The office, you can see there's just a little bit of everything about me in this office. If you look behind me, I've got my wall of toys from all different hardware manufacturers that I get to play with. I've got my Buffalo Bills towels on either side of me, showing my red, white, and blue colors of the Buffalo Bills. And then, of course, if you look real close, you can see pictures of my family all mixed into the little cubby holes and whatnot. My children and grandchildren are all right here in the office behind me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, like I said, I truly appreciate Ivanti Wavelink, bringing this huddle to light and sponsoring our conversation today. Thanks to my production crew, of course, and thank you guys. My favorite part of my job is obviously talking to two Gregs at once. Always amazing to spend time with each of you and learn from you. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate it. And I hope if you're out there and you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, that you realize that we're here to help. These are two passionate folks. The team at Barcoding, super passionate about what we do for a living as well. And we are here to help guide you through this. So if it felt overwhelming, or if you thought, wow, there's so many places I want to start, that's okay. We are here to help, and you don't have to go alone. You can call Barcoding. We can engage the folks at Ivanti, and we can get going together, and we can walk that road together, talk to the users together, and really come up with ways to give you not just that competitive edge, but improve the way people are going to do their jobs every day and improve that customer experience, which I think ultimately, to me, I'm all about the people, the humans involved. And I think that's the point of technology, right? Make our lives better. So thank you. And we're here for you. So any final words, or I'm going to wrap this up. Any last minute things?
Thanks for inviting us. This has been fun. It's been educational, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, if you liked this conversation, there is more to come on our Huddles page and on our YouTube channel. So subscribe to Barcoding's YouTube channel. We've got lots of good content that is coming out. If you want to get started with a consultation, barcoding.com, we're ready to help. And like I said, we'll engage these wonderful folks from Ivanti Wavelink, and we'll get going together. So look forward to seeing both of you in person soon. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Ivanti Wavelink, and we'll see you all next time.
Awesome.
Bye,
Take care,
guys.
everybody. Bye.